And next up, would love to welcome on stage Ryan Sysko, CEO of Amalgam, who's going to share a global case study on digital health.
Thank you, Lauren, and thank you for having us. So as Lauren said, I'm Ryan Sysko, the CEO of Amalgam. This is, believe it or not, my 20th year in digital health. I couldn't help but think about when Greg was talking about the rate of adoption of innovation, think about my journey and how many things have changed in the last 20 years, but how there are still some challenges that we're trying to solve. So a quick anecdote, when I started our first digital health company in 2005, a company called WellDoc, it was with two endocrinologists who were frustrated with the state of diabetes care and really, saw the need to extend their clinical voice to their patients outside the office. And patients were coming in with a cell phone and they thought, geez, how could we put an application on a phone to help support them, know what their treatment plan is, help them manage their behaviors. And we were naive enough to think, let's actually start a company and build an application. So we built a Java application. It worked on a Nokia 6600 phone. We gave it to a few of their patients. It had a terrible UI. But at the end of the day, the patients who used it were getting dramatically better. And it was enough of a proof point that we said, let's actually quit our day jobs, start a company. We started to go around, talk to doctors, talk to payers, and they all just blinked at us. They said, my patients only use their phones to talk. And we said, well, geez, why do drugs and devices get paid for, and why do they get adopted? We said they do clinical trials. They go to the FDA. They get those products cleared or approved. They get doctors to prescribe them and payers to pay for them. And we said, that's what we want to do. And that was really, in a lot of ways, sort of the birth of the foundation of the digital therapeutics industry. And I say that one of the things that hasn't really changed, and that as an industry we need to do a better job at, is how do we actually scale these technologies? We know they work. How do we get them to hundreds of thousands, millions of patients, and actually change outcomes at a population level? And one of the theories that we had, and one of the reasons why we started Amalgam, is that we believe pharma can be and play a big part in scaling these technologies. So today I'm going to talk about a case study of a program that we have with Novo Nordisk of an insulin titration application that they've licensed from us and is available in about 20 countries. So Amalgam, quick commercial, we work and support pharma in reaching patients and providers. On the provider-facing side, we have a suite of EHR integrated decision support products. We give it away to providers. Pharma licenses it from us. They build decision support that providers can opt into. So think about helping support next best actions at the point of care. And then for patients, we have a patient engagement platform that has a number of modules that can be configured to help support the needs of patients across many therapeutic areas. They can be regulated, unregulated. Last, sort of third leg of the stool for us is data insights. Both of the first two products create a lot of data. Today, we have data on about 15 million patients in the US, their full longitudinal EHR record. We're not a data broker. We don't sell our data. But there's a lot that we can understand about patients, what they need, providers, their populations that we can share with our enterprise partners. Kind of four core use cases that we work in today with our life sciences partners. One is in the next best actions in the CDS space, as I mentioned. The second, I'll actually go through kind of a detailed case study about our patient engagement platform. The other two that are emerging where we see a lot of potential, one is market access. So we actually work with a pharma company today, connect specialty EHRs to their hub so that providers can get real-time insights into benefits investigation, prior authorization. And then the other space where we're really intrigued by is in the R&D space, how we can provide that last mile, leveraging our EHR connectivity to find patients, to consent and enroll them on behalf of providers so that we can accelerate adoption and enrollment in clinical studies. So I'm going to talk today about Dose Check, which is a product that Novo Nordisk licensed from us. When we started Amalgam almost 9 years ago, we built a product on spec. It was an insulin titration application. And we thought insulin titration was a perfect example or case study for how to get pharma interested in digital health, that there would be a real business case around getting patients to the right dose of insulin, that they'd stay on therapy longer, they'd achieve their goals, and the pharma company would get people using the appropriate amount of medicine. So Novo agreed with us. They licensed the product. And one of the things that they did that I think has made the program really successful is that they actually treated it like a program launch or a product launch. They gave it a brand. They worked with their affiliates to understand, how do we need to configure this for each market? Let's talk to KOLs, get their buy-in. Let's build the coalition of the willing. So we started in one market, Brazil, with one insulin Zoltify. And I always sort of describe it as a science experiment. How would it work? And I'll talk about some of those examples. One of the things that I always found fascinating is when you look at insulin titration, the very first study that was ever published by Sanofi on how to titrate patients on insulin was in 2003. In December 2003, Diabetes Care, they published the Atlantis study, which showed that you could effectively get people to the right dose of insulin. There was no technology. Patients woke up every day. They called a nurse. The nurse, over a period of days, would calculate an average of their fasting blood sugar and tell them how to change their dose. But it was really effective. Patients got to the right dose in a short period of time with very low rates of hypoglycemia. In the last 22 years, there have been hundreds of titration studies that manufacturers have done. They're all on label. When you go to a manufacturer's HCP website, they have their titration schedule that they recommend. But when you ask patients, have you ever heard of the concept of titration? Today, 70% of patients have never heard of insulin titration. And it's really effective, but doctors don't believe that their patients can actually do it. And there's lots of reasons why. And consequently, because they're not titrating their insulin, almost a little bit more than 2/3 of patients who start on basal insulin don't get to their fasting glucose target. Insulin works. We just need to get people to the right dose. And so that was really what we said, that was the unmet need that we were trying to solve for when we started. We said, can we create a win-win for all of these actors in the ecosystem? How do we make it really simple for doctors to adopt these tools, bring it into their workflow, know which patients are appropriate? How do we help support patients on their journey? A lot of patients think, oh my God, my insulin dose is going up, I'm failing, my diabetes is getting worse. So how do we not only bring sort of the dose to life, but also give them the self-management tools and education to understand the journey that they're on? And then lastly, for Novo, how do we build a business case? Right? How do we make this self-sustaining? How do we make it scalable, something that affiliates across the globe could buy into? I'm happy to say that Dose Check today has grown from a science experiment. Today it will be in about 20 countries this year. It has grown from a single insulin brand to support all of Novo's insulins, their basal insulins. It also includes all of their GLP-1s. It integrates their connected devices like their insulin pens. It integrates into Bluetooth glucometers, continuous glucometers. It's regulatory cleared on 5 continents. And what we have found is that it works. Patients who use the product, 64% of them reach their fasting blood glucose target within about 8 to 10 weeks. Those patients increase their insulin dose by almost 50 to 60% without any intervention from their provider. So the provider sets a treatment plan, patients get the application. On a daily basis, we're telling the patient how much insulin to take. This is across tens of thousands of patients, multiple markets. We've replicated these results in clinical studies. We did a poster at the ADA. We have multiple RCTs underway, one in India, one in Saudi Arabia, another one in the US. But it's a great example of how we can support patients, providers, and our pharma customers in achieving the right outcomes using digital health. The other thing I'll mention is that Dose Check is a single platform. One of the real major challenges as a pharma company that's very different from your drugs and devices is that when you take a drug from one market to another, it doesn't change. The compound's the same. But when you build a digital application, it can be dramatically different. Not only do we need to translate, but we need to optimize from a cultural perspective. There are differences in care delivery models. There are differences in devices, in the systems that providers use. So what we've done is really take great care to build this so that each brand can have their own experience, they can have their own content, The different affiliates that opt into the program can configure the solution, so it's one software base with multiple configurations, which has created a very efficient model for Novo and its affiliates. So to me, the opportunity for pharma, as you think about, there's pharma companies we talked to today that say there will be a day when almost every drug has a companion application, that there are just needs that go beyond a drug, what a drug can provide. So if you think about the last 20 years, we've had amazing innovations in the pharmaceutical space, but our outcomes are getting worse. We're spending more money, we have sicker patients. The reality is that the needs of patients with chronic conditions go far beyond the medications that they take, right? We need to start to think about how the software can help patients holistically. And I'll give a good example. If you look today at CVS, they've partnered with Omada Health. At CVS, there are certain populations that can't get access to a GLP-1 unless the patient starts on Omada's digital application. And or they may have to use it in combination with a GLP-1. And so think about the position that puts you in as a manufacturer. One, you might get disintermediated from your patients. You might have some technology provider that essentially at the end of the day is governing whether or not your patient is going to get access to your medication. That technology provider and the payer is going to get access to all of that data, which you're not going to get access to. So from our perspective, it makes a lot of sense to show up to a payer with applications that support the medications, support the patients more holistically, making sure that patients are getting to the right dose of medication. And it was mentioned earlier, kind of PDURS, that there's this new regulatory framework which really allows pharma companies to build companion applications and launch and scale them on a global basis to differentiate your brands, to bring new value. You just think about some of the BMS medications today that require titration either to mitigate side effects, tolerability. Like these are all things that you could bring to the table to help support your patients, to build better and deeper relationships with patients and providers. So I'll pause there. Lauren's giving me the high sign.
Yes, thank you, Ryan. I do not believe we have time for questions, but hopefully you can catch him at the break. Thank you. That was wonderful.